So we can start the new edition of this webinar series, I think the first of the academic year. And yeah, it's my pleasure to present José Camacho-Collados from the University of Cardiff. Okay, Camacho-Collados is a professor in the School of Computer Science in Cardiff, and also a UCRI Future Leaders Fellow since 2021. He went to Cardiff to co-found the Cardiff Natural Language Processing Group in 2020, and to be honest, it's quite amazing to see the progress that the group has had in the last only 5 years, how much they have grown, and the level of activities that they have, including the workshop, the summer school they organize in the summer with great success, and many other things. So he started. He's from Granada, from Spain, and I think he did the PhD at Sapienza University in Rome with Roberto Navigli, if I'm not mistaken, and he stayed there until he moved on to Cardiff. So he works on many topics on NLP, okay, mostly on understanding and application. He has written several books also, including one in embeddings, which is quite nice. And yeah, nowadays he's working on many kind of language understanding applications and multilinguality with large language models and so on and so forth. I always like to say that he is a grandmaster in chess, okay, and that he's the current world chess champion, and that he goes into the World Cups, chess World Cups, to compete with the big wigs in chess, so that you know.
Well, that's quite overstated. I'm not a grandmaster, but yeah, thank you.
Sorry, I never understand how it works that.
Okay.
So anyway, he goes to the World Cup of chess and he's currently world champion in chess. So that's true. So yeah, and I think that's it. I give you the word, Jose, and yeah, you have like I don't know if Alex told you, but you have around 45 minutes more or less. Okay,
yeah.
Great, excellent.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
So after the talk, we have a round of questions, obviously. Okay.
Yeah, happy to stay for questions. Thank you very much for the nice and too kind introduction. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen quickly, and please let me know so you can see. So you can see, right? Can you see the screen? Just to.
Yes, but
yeah, okay, that's great. Because sometimes I share in Teams and then it happened with you even.
It is fine.
So yeah, okay. Then let me know if there is any issue at any time because yeah, sometimes I have some issues here. But yeah, thank you. It's a pleasure. Thank you for the invitation. So it's a pleasure to be here to talk to you about I was thinking what topic to talk about. Yeah, it's thought also this can be also relevant, no, for some people from your lab. And in general, I guess now it's a topic that that is relevant, no, for many people working on NLP. And the title is "How Language Models Navigate Culture in a Multilingual World." And then actually I'm going to talk later about what I specifically want to talk about. So this is obviously a very broad topic. Yeah, I guess I can skip this slide because Rodri already presented me. And I guess, yeah, I put here a few keywords, no, that things I'm interested in, mainly in NLP and any kind of topic related to NLP I will be interested in. As Rodri says, yeah, I'm part of the NLP group. I know there are people also listening from the group. So yeah, hi also to everyone there. And yeah, it's a group that, I mean, we work in many different topics as well. And it's growing. So yeah, hopefully you can hear some news, from the people from the NLP group as well. And yeah, about today's talk, I structure basically in two main blocks. Basically, I'm going to start our multilingual language models. That is going to be a big overview, and most of the presentation is going to be very high level. I'm not going to get into many details. I could talk about some example of multilingual language models and also opportunities. And then kind of the main part of the talk, or at least what I thought at the beginning, it was going to talk about the challenges, no, and some of the issues related to the size and language coverage and a particular cultural awareness. And yeah, I say that again, kind of the first part of the talk can maybe something as the positive parts, no, and the opportunities, and the second part of things that we are to improve. And basically, I was going to focus only on the second part, but then I realized that maybe the talk is too pessimistic and it kind of doesn't does justice, no, what I think, no, what multilingual language models, no, they can offer, no, LLMs in general, but specifically the multilingual models, no, what they can do. So I decided to include also some examples of application, mainly based on work from our lab, but also others. So to at least to balance a bit more, no, the presentation, and that basically also the message, no, it doesn't get distorted by kind of the challenges, because that's I want to talk about that more, no, so things that we can still do, no, to improve. So yeah, language models, and I mean, for sure, you hear about them, you use them, and you don't need probably this slide, of course. And this is just an oversimplification. So yeah, basically, we start with a large text corpus that now can be billions, trillions of tokens. You have something like a black box based on transformers, and you get a pretend language model, and that language model that can be used in many different tasks, no? And nowadays also, I mean, not only these tasks, but any kind of generation, chatbot, I mean, you can do basically anything and interact with them, no? And yeah, because this was a slide that it was kind of a few years back, mostly in the time of BERT and this kind of language models, but now we have a lot of post-training, and mostly you have generative language models that you can interact with them, and not only focusing on particular applications, but obviously ask about anything, really, and in kind of any language. So, and this is where I'm going to go. That is basically multilingual language models. So it's basically the same, but here the text corpus and the structure that you give to the model can be in different languages. So it's not going to be mostly in English, as traditionally most of the language models have been, but you can train in many languages at once, even not only having different language models for each particular language. And yeah, so some names of models that are there from the kind of previous generation and the newer generation as well. But yeah, most of the language models that now people use nowadays are sort of multilingual. I mean, it's very rare to have a fully monolingual language model, that they exist, but mostly they are kind of multilingual in some way. So yeah, what are multilingual language models? I mean, there is no a very complicated definition. It's basically language models that can interpret, or generate text in different languages. And obviously here we can discuss about the definition, what it means to interpret or to understand language or to generate language in one language, when we can say that a language model really learn or knows a language. But basically, this is the definition. I mean, you can use it basically in different languages. It doesn't have to be, can be only 2 languages, can be 10 languages, can be 20 or something like that. But that's it. As I mentioned, nowadays probably most of the language models that people are using are sort of multilingual. I put here some of the more common ones, GPT-4, Mistral, Llama, Claude, Gwen, DeepSeek. This is taken basically for the documentation, or sometimes it's not even the documentation, but I mean, people developing them and so on. So GPT-4 nowadays understand most major languages. I put 50 plus, but it's probably even more. Mistral is natively fluent, and this is probably outdated, the one on Mistral, but yeah, European languages mostly, but even more languages nowadays as well. Llama support these languages, but this is kind of the one that they claim that they support, but even, I mean, you can even talk in other languages and so it can work. Claude the same. Gwen, they claim they have at least around 30 languages that they are confident to say that they support. And DeepSeek, that is a bit of different to the others, because they say it's currently optimized for Chinese and English. But again, I think since then also they've been developing also the models that are even more multilingual. So yeah, nowadays most of the language models that you're going to be using are going to be multilingual, and they are getting even more able to speak more languages. How they work and why these multilingual language models work. So yeah, I mean, I could spend here all the time talking about that, even parts that I don't understand myself. So I mean, I decided not to do that, and basically I make it as simple. I mean, I say some sort of magic. I mean, that the way that they work in different languages, for me, I mean, surprised me more and more. I mean, not only language models, but even before, as I mentioned, as I mentioned here, I'm going to go to the word embedding era there. No, that it's kind of, it seems that it was a long time back, but not it's not really that long time ago. And what happened there, and so on, because that's actually kind of my journey, in multilingual NLP. So let's mention lingual word embeddings are vector spaces that include words in different languages. At the time, word embeddings was basically the backbone for most NLP applications, and then you have kind of a neural network on top of them that they use as an input. So they were kind of a big deal. Now almost nobody talk about them because we have language models that do everything, and they don't need to have kind of this specific representation, even though obviously they have embeddings for particular words and so on, but it's a different kind of mindset, a different setting. And what it surprised me at the time, and this was a part of the work on your university and your lab that has been very prominent on that, it's like the words that you're showing that you can learn this kind of multilingual, cross-lingual word embeddings, which basically monolingual data. So you have a corpus in English, another one in French, let's say, and then you can learn basically that translation from words without having seen any parallel data, any translations or anything like that. So that was really surprising to me. And you can see this, that something like this can work. And I guess also is the basis of how this multilingual language model are kind of natively, in a way, we can argue that, but are multilingual. And so yeah, since then actually I was very interested in work on this, and I work a bit even with embeddings, and then obviously with multilingual language models as well. Because yeah, I was still confused of how you can learn basically this kind of multilingual embedding space without any kind of information. You don't give any information about the model about what is the translations or any kind of parallel data that you usually use to build matching translation systems. At the same time, also, as I mentioned here, I work in social media, and I still working on social media as a part of some applications that I use in NLP. So I was working more in semantics, language understanding, and at some point I transitioned also to work more on applications and computational social science especially, and social media is kind of a big part of that. So in a way, social media, you see it, I mean, can be as a large multilingual corpus in some, right? And a multilingual corpus of basically just human written text, so people communicating with each other. Now, maybe that's a bit different. Maybe there are a lot of automatically or LLM generated text in social media as well, but at least at the time, you can assume that most of that was kind of human generated text as well. So it was very interesting for many things, and I'm going to talk about a few of the applications, as I mentioned, that I wanted to do a bit more, give a positive view of this kind of multilingual language model literature. Yeah, it's a very peculiar corpus, as I mentioned. You have people talk very quickly with slangs, with code switching, maybe they mix even languages, in the kind of that also an interesting part of the multilingual aspects. And people work usually with a lot of mistakes as well. I mean, the grammar is not regular. I mean, it's not a proper sentence that you can find in News Corpus or Wikipedia or things like that. And you have also emoji that I've been working perhaps too much in that topic and so on. But this is more relevant to this because, I mean, emojis is something that you can use in different languages, and some of them, they can have a very similar meaning. So you can use as an anchor between different languages. So even if you have something like English and Arabic that they use different scripts, you at least have emojis that you can connect them and so on and use them. So that was one particular work that we work on, and something that it was very fun working on at the time. And the we can learn also multilingual language models. So, I mean, yeah, I was talking about mostly cross-lingual embeddings, but we can learn nowadays also multilingual language models from them too. And this is kind of the basis of this work, SLMT, that again is kind of a language models from a previous area. So it's kind of the nowadays probably you can call the prehistory of language models. It was only 3 years ago, but nowadays you use kind of much larger language models, and it was kind of an encoder type of language model, like similar to BERT and so on. But still, I argue, at least I'm very fan of encoder language models, and I think they still have many applications, even though, of course, I mean, with LLMs, you can do many more things, and especially interact with them as well. So yeah, we basically develop language models that is being trained also on social media text. And at that time, there was nothing like that. And now there are others as well. So, I mean, you want to work with this, you can choose with kind of different kind of language models, architectures, and so on. So how it was trained, we took basically the XLMR architecture at the time, that it was the one that it was similar to, it was used basically to have a general domain multilingual language model. You use the checkpoint released basically by Facebook at the time, and then we try to continue training on social media. So the model specialized in that domain. So yeah, it was as simple as that. And we had to take into account a few things, a few details, but basically we use already existing architecture and a checkpoint of a model that existed and continue training on that. We work a bit of what kind of distribution of languages we wanted on. So we basically based the distribution also in the usage on social media, and we kept it that way. But I mean, we balance and smooth it a bit as well. So yeah, we have around 50 languages where you have some reasonable amount of data. But of course, and this is something that I'm going to talk later on, I mean, the languages that you have more on the left is the one that the language model is going to work better. The ones that are in the right, I mean, maybe you cannot expect the same level of performance. But because these models usually they work with some sort of training data, still you can use them for some applications as well. No, that is also one of the nice things of that. But yeah, that's also another part with the language models that I'm going to focus later on, that you never know which language they really speak or what is the level of the language, and it's hard to know in advance. And sometimes you need to test in your particular application and so on. And just quickly, I'm going to mention some of the applications that we work these language models just to show that, I mean, you can do many things with that and many interesting work on that, or maybe it inspires you to do other things as well, or you work maybe on something related to that. So sentiment analysis, topic classification, hate speech detection, and emoji prediction, as I mentioned, is maybe too much of emoji that I've been working on, but many other applications. And usually I try to work more from the social science point of view. So we have some interdisciplinary collaborations in this field. So social scientists have decided basically one of the research questions that we want to work on, but thanks to having these models, we can do answer some research questions at a scale. And just, yeah, for the sake of it, because this is not the main point of the talk, we're going to run sentiment analysis and topic classification. Sentiment analysis is very popular in social media. You can use for many domains. I've been seeing people working on any domain, and for any researchers from companies that they know to know if the product people like it or not, and so on. So it's one of the most popular tasks that you can do in social media. At that time, it's again, I mean, people were using, but you cannot test it, not how good the model is. So we also developed a unified benchmark, and what we did, that is the simple thing there, we also fine-tune some models in that data. Sorry about that. Yeah, we developed a sentiment analysis model, a multilingual, and using different applications I'm going to show later. And just to say that these models, sentiment analysis, and even other fine-tuned specialized models are very popular. And just because nowadays we hear a lot of LLMs that of course are very useful, but they have some limitations, and most of the time they are behind an API, but also, I mean, they are very large, expensive, and for certain applications, maybe you can have a specialized solution that works as well or even better. So that's why probably, I mean, people can use still these models, and they find it used not to analyze, for example, thousands of posts in social media, for example, or millions. As a case study, we work also, as I was mentioned, some of the questions that we wanted to answer. I mean, this is one example where we collected a lot of millions of tweets from the members of parliaments or politicians in Greece, Spain, and the UK. And then we use basically these multilingual language models, specialized on sentiment. We wanted to analyze the relation between sentiment and virality. So basically, we want to know if, because we have the intuition that maybe posts that were made negative, they receive more attention and so on. And that's something that we want to test. It's been shown basically by other analysts and so on, but it hasn't been tested at a larger scale. And yeah, I mean, the conclusion was basically what more or less we inferred that the tweets that were more negatively charged, they are more popular by the MPs. So I mean, the more, sometimes it was like the more negative the tweet it is, so the more likes, retweets, and interactions the tweet will receive. So this is an example. We use different parliaments like UK, Spain, Greece, and also other parliaments as well. And it showed that, for example, in Spain, I mean, like among the most popular tweets, the 5% most popular tweets, 71% were negative. So there was a lot of negativity there, and I guess probably you are feeling that there's a lot of politicians fighting each other and all the time and things like that. So I mean, yeah, this is reflected on what we found here. We also analyzed basically also from the parliament, from the Basque Country and Wales and others. But yes, we showed two examples that I connected with the audience of today. And myself was working in Wales, of course. And what is interesting is in this parliament, you have to to basically analyze different kind of languages, no? So I mean, in the Basque country, mostly you can do Basque language and Spanish as well, and in Wales, no, you have Welsh and English, and again before, I mean, in the other parliaments, you can have different languages there involved, no? So you need kind of language models that can handle different languages, and that is kind of the beauty of multilingual language models, that you can use the same research kind of at once. And it's also something similar, no? In the Basque country, they were very negative. In Wales, kind of, it was surprisingly they were more positive. And yeah, in my experience, I mean, it's more local people. I kind of talk more about local issues and so on, and you don't find that negativity that much. But yeah, in the Basque country, for example, yeah, the top 5% tweets of politicians, 75% were negative. And another thing that we analyze, that again, is a trend that you can feel and you can see also in the news and so on, that yeah, the tweets by politicians are getting increasingly more negative over time. So the positive tweets more or less remain stable, but I mean the negativity is just going up. No, so I don't know if that has cycle that obviously politicians know that the more negative tweets, the more kind of visibility they will receive and so on. But yeah, this is something that can be tested with these multilingual language models, not only for one language or one particular parliament or one particular language, but I mean you can do for different kind of countries and languages. Yeah, just quickly again, another kind of similar topic. So I mean, some of the times you want to analyze what people are talking about, what are the topics. So you can analyze, basically associate, each post with different topics. So here we put 19 different topics, and again with different languages, and we fine-tune a model, a multilingual model, that can then decide the topic in kind of any languages. But again, when I say any languages, it means the language that we have more tested, we are more sure that it can work. And so on. So yeah, we have something like this. Posted in English, you can say that this is a music, a music tweet, or you have some in Japanese and in Greek that I don't really understand, but I mean, it's supposed to be about these topics, those languages as well. And yeah, the fact that now you can use basically a model, multilingual model for many kind of tasks to have an idea of what people are talking about. And just I finished with this on social media, but we have all the tools we unified in this platform called TweetNLP. That is kind of a big team. It's an effort from different universities, different countries as well. And we integrate basically all these language models, application, fine-tune models, specialized models, and so on, especially focused with small models and open models that you can use and so on. So you are interested more in that, you can check it yourself and so on. And we are basically what we feel also we need to expand in the kind of multilingual capability of these models. Now we focus a lot on English, and also we have multilingual models, but it's usually easier not to have a good model working in English and in other languages. That is also one of the main limitations. So yeah, I mean, I promise the first part is going to be more positive, and I could share some of the work that we do on, but I mean, there are so many other nice applications that you can do with multilingual language models. So multilingual language models are nice. I mean, they enable multi-applications. They support many languages. Anything else? I mean, there's something bad. So there's something more good. I mean, in a way, multilingual language models, they are less socially biased than monolingual language models. The reason of that, I mean, there has been different kind of works also try to understand that one, and here we test it also empirically. It's because they kind of get data from different kind of countries and different kind of cultures as well. So in a way, they compensate from each other. So, for example, if you take one data from one particular domain or one particular country or one particular thing, it's going to be always more restrictive. So you're going to have more specific biases. Once maybe you move it towards more kind of diversified data, you can have kind of that benefit. So I mean that's kind of a nice benefit also on its own, depending on the application as well, because I mean you can get it without much effort. This kind of this model that is not biased. And again, it's not saying that it's not biased. I mean the model is still biased in many different ways, but you can have that advantage with respect to monolingual language models. But yeah, again, this is great. And maybe I put too much emphasis now when I change the talk and try to put the positive after language models. Maybe I'm talking out too much, but now I'm going to talk about the issues and kind of some of the challenges that we can have with these multilingual language models and what we can do about that. Most of the things are still open problems. It's not like I'm coming here with the solutions. I come here with some of the ongoing work that we are doing in this area, but there are many more things that are to be done and to be understood. That's also another of the problems here, that many things we don't even understand. So the first issue that I'm going to talk about is like the size of the models. I mean, multilingual models, in general, LLMs are huge. You want them to have good performance. but especially multilingual models. I mean, and this is also due, depending on the model, especially the ones I talk about are these kind of small, mid-sized models. They can take a lot of space just only to understand basically the embedding matrix, no? So they talk, each kind of token is going to be associated, or subtoken is going to be associated, no, with one embedding, and you need to learn well how it works and so on. For multilingual models, you need much more space just to store that embedding matrix. You need much more space, and just to also to be able to work with that, you need more also as well. So with models like this kind of they were called large, for example, embarked large, but now it's very small by today's standard. But embedding matrix can occupy up to the 86%, no, of the whole kind of parameters, no, that you have in the whole language model. So yeah, depending on what you want to work, again, as I mentioned before, sometimes we want to work at scale and so on. So this is a limitation because the models are getting bigger and bigger, and the more multilingual it is, the more space you need, because you need to basically tokens for any languages, you need to have them covered. Even if it's not the whole words, no, you need to have subtokens, you have different scripts, and you have also the limitation that, I mean, you can have even similar words, no, in different languages as well. And that can be also complicated to handle by the models. But yeah, you have to handle different scripts, different words, different kind of meanings of words, and so on. And you need a lot of space to have a multilingual language model, and also bigger than what you will need for a monolingual model. So, I mean, again, not that we solve, but I mean, one work that what we did, and I think I'm surprised that it's not used that much nowadays, but I mean, it's something that I would be more interested in having something like that, because it's something very simple. No? So a trick is, if you need, for example, a multilingual language model that you have in many languages, and in many low resource languages, you don't have a highly capable, no, language model for that particular language, for low resource languages especially. So maybe you need only basically the tokens that are for your own language. So you don't need, basically, if you are going to work, let's say in Japanese, so you don't need tokens in Arabic, for example, no, or things like that. So you can basically remove that from the language model, and your model is going to work as good as the original one. But it's going to be much smaller. So this is what we work here. So it's something very simple. Just keep the tokens in your target language. So once we have a very good multilingual language models, because one company or one big research lab has resources to train it, we can have one specific monolingual language model also based on these multilingual models. Just keeping the tokens, and you will have much smaller language model, but you will keep the same capabilities. So that's something that can be done basically with any kind of models. But of course, they have to be open. I mean, nowadays we have a lot of closed models, and we can do that. But I mean, with the open models, we can do that. Other issue, of course, is the language coverage, and this is connected with basically almost anything I'm going to talk about today. No, I mean, the training data that you feed the models, this is how they're going to learn. So, I mean, the kind of the unstructured data that you can give to the model, or the post-training data that you want to give to the model, I mean, depending on the language that you want to feed the model, I mean, it's going to be as good or as bad, you know, in that language. I mean, there are other factors as well, but in the end, this model have shown that the more data, the more high quality data, the better the performance is going to be. So this is going to be, it's hard, I mean, to solve this issue, because I mean, there is no way around that. I mean, low resource languages usually they have less data about that, but so what can you do about that? Well, really create more data and so on, but I mean, it's never going to be to the point of level of, for example, English. No, I mean, I don't think any kind of language would get kind of the similar amount of resources and data. So this kind of causes, no, like, I mean, we call multilingual language models, but I mentioned before, I mean, some languages are more multilingual than others, no? So any kind of multilingual language models, so the ones I talk about, I mean, in English, it's going to perform much better than in other languages. And yeah, and for some languages, it's not going to perform well at all, even if they can officially support them. So yeah, as I mentioned, yeah, I mean, there is no solution, and I guess many people don't work in kind of different communities, with international communities with low resource languages. They make a strong emphasis, no, on having more data, which I think is kind of the more direct way, not to improve these models. Of course, this doesn't mean that we need to work on kind of other kind of approaches, maybe less data hungry, or ones more efficient models as well, know that they can learn with less data. But I mean, if you have more data, more high quality data, for sure, I mean, the model is going to be better. And this is, for example, the common crawl is not the only training data that is being obviously used by the models, but it's a good indication of where we are and what most models are using. So, for example, in English is 43.4% when I checked of the Common Crawl, which is almost 50%. It's only one single language when there are more than 7,000, or depending on how you count the languages in the world. The top 10 languages, they have already more than 82%, and 82% of the data. And in the end, I mean, the rest of the 7,000 languages, because I mean, some of the data also is unknown, the language, but they have less than 50% of the Common Crawl, no? That is basically 99% of all languages, no? They have only less than 15% of the data in the Common Crawl. And this is basically what people put in the language models. You just throw them to the language model, you put more data. Obviously, you have some quality filters and so on. But yeah, this is what is reflected in the language models at the end of the day. Another interesting behavior that I've seen, I mean, some people have been working on and in different kind of papers and so on. It's like multilingual language models, sometimes they use English as a pivot language. And it's been shown in translation, but other applications, even non-multilingual applications sometimes, that is even more surprising. So in a way, the models, or most of these models, are thinking in English. So I mean, when you need a translation, even if you have, I don't know, French to Spanish or anything like that, then you pass by English. And yeah, and this has obviously unexpected consequences. So I mean, the fact that the models are thinking on English, it means that also most of the data that is in English, that is English-centric and so on, is have been embedded, kind of in these models and the way that they interact and they think and so on. And not only English, of course. I'm talking about English because it's a more high-performing language that is there. But I mean, any other high-resource language also can happen this behavior as well. So yeah, this comes with biases that we don't even understand as well. No? And this brings me basically to the last part of the presentation, that the one I'm going to spend a bit more time, that is the cultural sensitivity, and awareness. That is very connected, with this kind of language coverage. So I mean, you have a lot of data in English. Most likely, your model is going to be biased, towards kind of some specific things of the cultures, of countries where they speak English or things like that. So yeah, I mean, the question that we want to ask and that we want to also solve and to get closer to a solution is like, multilingual language models, are they sensitive, to different kind of cultural contexts and so on? I mean, you can name everything, so yeah, different traditions. We have different kind of holidays in each kind of each country. We have kind of different things that we care about, different things, part of how our education works. I mean, and almost everything will be different from country to country, and of course, even the farther the country it is, or the kind of the culture it is, I mean, the more distant it's going to be this as well. So I mean, here also we have to distinct, where we have many objective use, of language models. I mean, when they work on code, on maths and so on, that is mostly what we talk about nowadays. So most of the time, I mean, there's going to be a clear solution to this, correct? This is not, When we talk about culture and so on, and in many cases, again, I mean, something can be plain wrong when you're talking about culture, but in other cases, it's simply how you interact, and how you can adapt, to the context, that what can be. So, I mean, you can maybe reach the correct solution, but it's going to take you longer because the model has to understand this context as well. Just to note, and I'm going to start this one to make the point probably where you're going to feel it, that is a problem, because I'm going to show you how this problem is also in English is happening too, when you kind of expect that the model is going to capture almost everything, because you have a lot of data in English, but often it's not the case. So in this work that we presented last year, in a collaboration with KAIST, that it was mostly led by them, by students in KAIST, as we annotated a hate speech data set that is coming from different sources, but in these 5 different countries where they have English as the main language. So Australia, the UK, the US, Singapore, and South Africa. And basically, people annotated if they believe some tweet and some post, they were hateful or not. We kind of share the same kind of guidelines for everyone, and we kind of have the same setting, and annotate also kind of the data. We have also data from different countries as well, but they also annotate also the same data as well, so we can compare basically the answers that they have. And here I have to say, I mean, there were already differences, between languages, between different countries and how they annotate. So I mean, what people think were hateful in one language, they were not in others. And there are many tasks like this. I mean, that hate speech detection, we can find it that is a simple task that is binary, say, deciding that is there are more variants, but you have to decide whether a post is hateful or not. But there are a lot of subjectivity in these tasks, and in many tasks in LLP, I mean, there's going to be always some perspectives, and people will think in a different way, and so on. So it's a matter of how much this is captured by the models. And again, I'm not going to get into the particular details, but in all kind of experiments that we did with large language models, they show that there is significant difference between the performance in the annotations made by the Western countries like the US, UK, Australia, the UK and the US, and kind of other countries, and especially Singapore. We found that Singapore always you have the lower performance, and this is kind of the language models. In a way, they were more aligned with people from the US, let's say, or from the UK, than people from other kind of countries, that are less prominent in general, in the data of these models. It can be also smaller countries and so on. There may be many reasons for that, but I mean, the models were more biased towards these kind of countries, and they get better performance here. This is just the accuracy, on the annotations by the UK, the US, Australia, and South Africa, and Singapore. And this happened consistently. And again, this is for English, that is kind of the more dominant language. So what can we expect for the languages, especially low resource languages? So of course, this is going to be even much more marked than for what we found in English. And it's a much bigger problem. It was already a problem for English, and you can imagine when you are moving towards low resource languages or even mid resource languages. The problem of this is it's very hard to evaluate and to quantify this. And some of the cases is kind of implicit bias. And some of the cases is because you simply don't know. I mean, because you have been trained your model in the data you have available, you have a lot of data from many countries, but very few data from others. So it's not that the model is kind of more culturally biased to one country, but it knows much more about one particular culture than others. So I mean, also there is no way around that, and it's hard to quantify. Which one is cultural awareness and which one is kind of knowledge, let's say, as well. But yeah, to try to answer this kind of some of these questions, or at least as much as we can. We try to develop a kind of a more multilingual and multicultural benchmark. So that's what I'm going to talk a bit now. So we developed Blend, that is sort of a benchmark for LLMs on everyday language in diverse cultures and languages. Again, this was a collaboration that it was led by people from Cardiff and KAIST. And yeah, it was mainly led by Junho, Nejon, and Jody here in the picture, but many other people were involved in this work. And it was quite really interesting for me. I was never kind of in charge of this kind of project because it was a very big project. But not only that, but basically each person in the project was from a different countries and they spoke a different language. So this made it super interesting, and I can learn a lot from that, only from the process itself as well. Of course, it may be challenges because there are so many things that are different from each other. But yeah. But I think we need also kind of this kind of multilingual efforts, and international efforts to really understand kind of this issue a bit more. And obviously, this is a work that was already finished, but there are so many more things to be done. So what we did here, at the time, I mean, when we were checking, there were a lot of cultural data sets, but most of them, I mean, because it's easier, you have the data as well too. They will rely on either social media, Wikipedia. And in fact, I work a lot also in the part of social media as well. So I'm also to blame for that. I mean, not to blame, because I mean it's good to do any research on that, but yeah, but things you need other kind of data, and especially kind of everyday, decisions, kind of the everyday of each country, and each culture is a bit lost, like the culture that you have, like what is your education, where people go to school, what time they go to school, what people eat, when they go. What street food they like, or things like that. I mean, that's usually lost, in this kind of context. So what we did is we have 16 countries and regions, and in total 13 languages. So some of the kind of the countries and regions, they can share the same languages as well. And we try to have balance, with different kind of different language families, different kind of high degree of resources, so high resource languages, mid resource, low resource as well, and so on. So that's what we do, and we try to collect more or less equitatively, the same kind of information from each kind of the regions and countries. So that's why first we collected from the people from this country or region. We collect in their kind of the native languages questions particular question that they found relevant about some particular topics. We have there are at that time 6 topics, and they kind of good language. Then once everybody has made all the questions, we try to collect together. We kind of did some kind of quality control, deduplication, because obviously there are some questions that are repeated and so on, and things like that. No, but then we ended up with a number that we say here, 500 questions and answers that they were annotated by. Basically, all the questions were annotated by different, by 500 annotators for each different region. And we have different settings, like more open-ended setting, where the language model can basically give the answer without giving any predefined answers. And another one that is a multiple choice questions that, I mean, has the advantage at least that you can easily evaluate, because you have the different options. But I mean, has the disadvantages, it's been shown before too, that you're already leading the model to some particular answers as well. And I'm going to give you a few examples so you can get a feel of what the data set look like as well. No? And so the statistics, as you in the end, we have 500 questions, but they were translated not in each kind of languages, and it was kind of answer annotated by each person in each kind of region as well. So in the end, we have a total of 52,000. Obviously, this is misleading, but again, we need to ensure that the 52,000 or most of them, I'm not going to argue that there are not going to be issues, but we need to do quality control basically on that number. Yeah, it's kind of the countries and the languages now that we that are included in the benchmark. And this is kind of things that you can find out. No? So I mean, you can imagine that. I mean, answers is one of these. It's a simple question. You know, what street food do people like to eat? And basically here, what we do is what they do like to eat in the US, in the UK, in Spain, in Korea, or any kind of country. And the answers change a lot. No, I mean that you can have a question like this. No, like what street food do people like to eat? In the US, you have people answering mostly hot dogs and so on. In the UK, you have kebabs and burgers, for example, too. But then you move, for example, to Mexico, you have tacos. Most people that it's not been mentioned in kind of in almost any other country, sorry, in the US as well. But then you have also in Korea that people say something totally different, so tteokbokki or something like that. No, so I mean, so yeah, the answers differ a lot, no, from country to country. And this is a bit of the results. Again, I'm going to be quickly on what we get here, but in a way, I mean, it's not something that we discovered, not here, but I mean, models show a significant drop in performance, not for underrepresented culture, no, and low resource languages. And there is a big difference. So I mean, here, I mean, this is kind of accuracy on that. In countries like in the US, you have the top accuracy, model like GPT, Claude, Gemini, and so on. And you get performance even over 80%. So I mean, they are pretty good at that, no? I mean, for some, I mean, that's a pretty high performance. But then, I mean, the less prominent, no, the language is, no, let's say, or the number of speakers, or the prominence on the common crawl, on the data. Obviously, I mean, there are many factors, no, that we cannot. It's not easy to analyze. But let's say that the high resource languages or countries with a lot of kind of data they contributed, they work better. The countries with kind of less data and languages that are less resource, you get worse performance. And you have big performance points, like I say, 52.3 percentage points between the US and Ethiopia, for example. So you have a model that really works for one language and country, and a model that really doesn't work at all. No, so I mean, you have this kind of changes. Another thing that for me was interesting, also from the practical point of view. No, so I wanted to see what happened if, because we translated all the languages, all the questions too. So we asked in the local language or in English, what would you get? No, what performance you will get better? No, and this is quite interesting. I mean, now that you see, makes a lot of sense. But I mean, what we found is like here, for example, you have in purple, no, you have in the local when you are prompting the language models in the local language, and in blue is in English. And you can see, for example, in Spanish, the questions from Mexico as well, or other kind of countries that is kind of have results as well. You can see that if you prompt in the local language, it's better. I mean, we understand better about the culture. Maybe it doesn't necessarily know more, but it's basically, yeah, it's probably going to answer more relevant than if you ask in English. So this is what you have in the left. No, in the left, you can see like the prompting in the local language is better, the same kind of questions. But then in the right, Azerbaijani, Sudanese, Amharic, and so on, you have, in some cases, vastly better performance when you ask basically in English than you ask in those languages. So that also makes the question, I mean, it's kind of an unfair issue too. I mean, but if you are a country, you are going to use a model like GPT that we're using here, or others, no? If you know, for example, English, I mean, you are much better just using English as your local language. But obviously, I mean, this is something that is not a desirable behavior. But when you are working on some particular application, it's something to take into account in many cases as well. But something that, of course, we want that it gets balanced eventually. But yeah, but that will take a long time. And yeah, you have mid-resource languages that is a bit more mixed the results. You're not sure if it's better to plot in the local language or in the other one. Maybe you should plot in both and take an average or something like that. But this is kind of another research idea. I haven't seen much works on this one, no? What kind of languages you should prompt and what results kind of the models get, no? And maybe if you can improve the model that you know it works worse in your language, or maybe with doing some back translation or things like that, no? That they can, even if people work basically in your local language because you don't know English, but maybe you can do something to the question, translate it automatically or something like that, and maybe it's gonna work better. I mean, there are kind of research ideas that are quite interesting, and not only in the cultural aspect, and in general, no, in different tasks as well. And just sharing some of the key findings from this human evaluation that I think is even more interesting than the kind of the automatic evaluation. And there's a lot of stereotypical responses. I mean, that especially about a question about food or festivals. I mean, they will ask the models, no, maybe some particular food for some country, and it will answer every time that food. For example, it was very interesting to see in Korea that basically you ask about some food, no, that is relevant for something, and it will answer kimchi most of the time, even when it doesn't have to do anything to do with that. Or festival, you can to answer kind of very well-known festival, no, for some countries maybe they know the more well-known festival. So whenever you ask about something, you can answer about that. Then you can expect some hallucinations as well. So I mean, sometimes they were quite surprising, at least to me, because we were trying to find like the model answered this kind of name when you ask in Azerbaijan about the most famous basketball player in the country, and as far as we know, and the people language leads and so on, I mean, that person doesn't exist at all. So I mean, yeah, don't know where it came from. I mean, the name maybe it sounded like that, but yeah, but that's something that you can get, no? And again, the more low resource languages, the more hallucinations you can expect. And yeah, it happened also that the model sometimes answer in one language and it start answering in another language, and that happened again in lower source languages. So sometimes it uses basically similar languages. Sometimes it's a default to English or things like that. So that also happened. So yeah, that's all basically about blends. Happy also you have any question. I know I passed very fast, but I mean, that's basically just the beginning. I feel, I mean, there's so many things, and especially how to integrate this into models as well, that there's a very much open question. And we're extending the task. Now we have also the Semeval 2026. So if you are interested in that, it's now open and it's going to be run through January and so on. So it's still some time also to participate if you are interested. Now we have even Basque now, thanks to the efforts now from people from your group that have contributed not basically as the language leads for Basque. You have also Basque language data as well. In addition to other languages, we are kind of doubling the number of languages and countries and regions. And what else? I mean, we need to, as I mentioned, we need to find a way, how to incorporate, this kind of cultural perspective in LLMs, and to have a way to distinguish, like how much is the cultural knowledge or cultural awareness, and how much is the model maybe doesn't know about certain things. But yeah, they need to understand that sometimes the question has to answer differently in cultural language, and sometimes it's better not to answer than to answer kind of stereotypical answers, as I mentioned before, So I mean, the model will be good also to answer don't know, when it doesn't know certain things as well. Yeah, how to balance this kind of knowledge, let's say multilingual and monolingual models, because sometimes you have monolingual models for some particular region or something that maybe you want that to be focused on that particular culture, or maybe you want that model to know about all cultures, or the same way multilingual models, I mean, you're not sure what you want the model to cover and so on. So I mean, that's also, it depends a lot on the application. That's also what I feel. I mean, nowadays we use a lot of language models by APIs, by providers, but they are kind of static, so you cannot tune them and so on. So I like a lot to have even models that you can tune for your specific application and so on. And I think that's probably the future where it's gonna go. It's not having a single model that knows everything, but you have several models that can work well depending on your application, and it's going to be more or less biased depending on what you do, or what you care about. And some project that we're working now also with Joseba, that is now visiting also Cardiff here, on understanding basically the implicit cultural biases on LLMs. And I think they're very interesting results. I don't know, I want to anticipate in that work, but I mean, the biases that this model have sometimes is not visible when you ask them, because I mean, when they ask them, you have a lot of kind of safeguards and so on, and sometimes you need to ask about many other thing or something to basically find this kind of also in this implicit bias as well. And this is something that also can be worked on, and sometimes you don't need to ask the question directly as we ask, for example, in Blend, but you can ask different ways, too, as well. Yeah, that was all for me. As I mentioned, I want to be positive, and I'm positive. I love this kind of large language models, especially multilingual language models. Are incredible. I mean, for me, magic in many parts. I don't understand how they do what they do. But yeah, you can use them in many kind of applications. No, I mean, what I say, especially when you're working with multilingual language models, depending on application, it's good to have some tests before. Don't completely rely on them, especially depending on the languages on what particular application you're going to use, because it differs a lot from task to task, domain to domain, language to language, and things like that. So it's good to have always some kind of in-house evaluation of whatever you want to do. And many questions remain. I could have a few, but there are many. How to balance the language abilities and cultural awareness, as I mentioned before. Do we need a multilingual model that can work for every languages, or we want more specialized in different languages in one particular language? As I guess, my answer is always it depends on the application and so on. You are good to have different options, and try different options as well. That's another kind of interesting thing. At least I was interested from the research perspective of how should we prompt, or how the models now work, prompting in our native language or in our local language, or we can use a high resource one, and if we can take advantage of that for some applications. We have obviously things that we don't want, and we want them to be equitable and so on, but in many applications, maybe that can help too. And how truly multilingual, multicultural, multilingual language models, as I mentioned, there are a lot of they resort to English, or you're using English as pivot and so on. So how truly multilingual they are, I mean, that's just a question that is hard to answer. But in general, very interesting. I think if you're working in multilingual, NLP, multilingual language models, and especially cultural awareness and understanding, there's so much thing that you can work on, and many interesting kind of research topics. So that's all for me. Thank you all. I'm happy to take any question. Scary Casco. Gracias. So yeah, thank you to everyone, and yeah, I hope that it was interesting for all of you. Happy to have any kind of discussion either now or later as well.
Thanks, Jose, for the talk. We have some time. Yeah, we have some time for questions on this topic. So if anybody is interested. No, that was a good technique of suggesting questions in the last slide.
Yeah, there are some questions there too that we can discuss. So.
No one wants to have a question. We have Jose here for some more minutes.
Yeah, I know I also talk about many things too, and maybe too fast too, but yeah. Hopefully, any kind of related to that or discussion, I'm happy to.
I have many questions, so I'm going to make one. So, well, several maybe. So when we talk here about high multilingual models or monolingual models for a particular language community and so on and so forth, we are talking, as you say, about different kind of tasks, right? So it is one thing to have a language model or a multilingual language model that deals with these kind of questions that are more about cultural sort of behavior or traditions or customs usually from one country, and then another one that actually tries to optimize language production in the sense that the language it is correct, or it tries to know about the specific knowledge, right? So you can try to optimize a language model to perform very, very, very well on this particular domain or in this particular domain, and so on and so forth. No, so it seems to me that when you talk about having multilingual language models that can work in order to query them with respect to these more cultural sort of customs. I don't know if we are missing or we are just uh, forgetting or we are just not giving priority to the development of large language models that really perform well, really generate correct text or whatever in a target language, maybe a minority language, whether we are trying to encourage the development of these monolingual language models to have assistance in many domains and so on and so forth, and whether we are not giving perhaps the importance of having these models also working for discriminative tasks, right? That you need good performance and strict development and so on. So I don't know what is your take on this.
No, that's a very interesting question. I've been thinking also quite a lot because I think we are moving towards kind of, at least in general, no, we have a model that does everything, no, like a ChatGPT, no, something that you have many users that use it, no. So obviously that's one particular, no, big animal that obviously we want to work on that and improve and so on, no. But then we have others, no, and this that's my take because now it seems that we have these models and now they can do everything, but when you work in some particular task, you will find, I mean, that's in many cases not the solution. Maybe it's part of the solution, no, but it's not the only solution. So we need to develop kind of other type of language models, more specialized, as you say, no, in different kind of tasks and so on. And the way that you want to develop that model is very different, no, than the one that you want to work like any user can use it, no. So any kind of
Mhm.
user without any knowledge, no. For example, I was talking the task in social media. You want to use it at the scale. You want to use it only for kind of user generated, no kind of content. You want to use it maybe at real time. You want to use it in different languages, as I mentioned, no, as well, no. But then you can move to other domain, and it's going to be different, no. So I mean, the kind of what you need for that particular model or specialized model is very different depending on task to task, no. So I think at least what I see the future or what I see where we should be going is to that direction, no. I mean, we have now great models that understand languages, no, like language models and so on. But then, depending on the task that they do, they need to specialize on different things. No? So, I mean, there are many things that maybe we're talking about culture, but maybe for some tasks you don't even need to care about that much. No, you're talking about maybe maths or code, no, to a certain extent. No, but in others you need a lot. No, and especially these models that are used by users around the world, they need to be aware of the culture and so on. No, so I mean, yeah. So yeah, I think that's what we have to think. We need to think at least NLP because obviously everything has been unified, no, around kind of LLMs, GPT kind of style, no, kind of LLM that they can do everything. But in reality, no, things are more messy. No, so you need kind of more specialized models. You need to work. I mean, that's so interesting because obviously, I mean, researchers in the area, no, it's still that we can contribute, and it's not only kind of the big, no, corporations that can learn the biggest language models and so on, no, but there are many more things to do. So yeah, I don't know if I answered the question, no, but that's kind of something that that I try to I've been thinking a lot. No,
Thanks, Jose. So anyone else uh, has a question? Yes. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I have a question. Hi, Jose. Thanks for the talk, first of all. Very impressive. So in terms of adapting language models to, like, let's say, localize them to a specific community, what do you think would be the direction if you have like limited resources? Like, would you maybe try to collect more documents written about this specific community, or would it be about collecting knowledge in some sort of, let's say, a knowledge base and trying to add that to your model when you're generating responses? So have you thought about this, of how to localize these models, but in kind of a low resource setup, in the sense of you have people in the community who would be interested, but you can't really create a huge amount of text for the model to learn from that. So
yeah, no, that's a very good question. For sure, you probably have a more interesting answer that I will do. No, but yeah, so I know you, but yeah, but I think it's also relevant, no, to the previous question as well. No, I mean, here I want to distinguish. No, if we want to have like a large language model, no, GPT style, and this is what, for example, I show here, no, in the experiment, no, with Blend and others, no, that is very hard to have it. No, even if you push hard, no, you are never going to get to that level, not to that. But at the same time, no, we have many resources and kind of language models that already can work well in some tasks. So you have data from that particular domain. So I mean, I put social media because I always work on that, but there are so many other things, no? But you have data of that particular domain, that data maybe that you annotate and so on. These models are very versatile, no? So they can work well, no, even if they are not perfect, let's say in general domain, let's say, no, but you can use them a lot in a specific task, no. Then obviously we also want to have a model that can do everything like the others do as well, no. But I feel that you can do much more now with kind of this specialized mindset, no? So some particular applications that are relevant to a community. For every community will be different, no? Maybe you want to develop this kind of technology or these others, no? So maybe you can focus on that kind of data from that domain, data, no, kind of specialized data, no, having kind of people that can annotate if you need, no, or things like that, or synthetic data in many cases, no? Maybe you can use another model that you can use synthetic data as well. There are different ways not to go around that, but I think, yeah, it depends always, no, on what is kind of the community. But yeah, I guess my point is also try to see what the focus is, no, and what you want to do, no, and depending on that, probably you want to kind of different data. If you want to develop the technology like a large language model, no, let's say like having the same level of GPT, I mean, you need vast amounts that probably you are never going to get. But obviously, yeah, the more you get, the closer you're going to get to that. But specialized solutions, and models that can solve different tasks, I think that yeah, can contribute a lot, and maybe, and you can see also the benefits maybe more near term as well, no? But yeah, but I don't know, yeah, what is your take? If you have any kind of other, what do you think?
Me personally, or you're asking for my tips? I mean, thanks for your answer. I mean, I'm not sure yet. I mean, I have been thinking about this. Like, I think people speaking non-English languages or non-higher resource languages would be interested in like saying, okay, I would want my language or culture to be better represented, but I'm not really sure what's the direction. Should I maybe tell them, please write more Wikipedia pages in your language, and that's how somehow it will start to improve? Or is there maybe a more targeted strategy to actually make the models more efficient or more kind of knowledgeable of the diversity? So I don't really have answers, but I agree on the idea of instead of trying to make a generic model for these languages, maybe you can be a bit more specific with some use cases, and then there's more promise there. So I'm afraid I don't have an answer as well.
But, sorry, I put you in the spot, but yeah, I was curious also to know what you think. And yeah, I mean, my other point, even if you want, because you probably want, no, a larger models, know that that you can interact, no, so kind of any user won't interact and so on. Any kind of data that you develop is going to contribute to that, because they are data hungry, no? So the more data that you develop or more task specific, it's going to help on that task as well. And maybe another kind of research direction that I don't think is very kind of followed, no? But this is go to the point that, for example, using a model like GPT or something, when you prompt in kind of a lower source language, it doesn't give you that good performance, but maybe we have ultra sensors models for many languages now. So maybe something like that, no, can also help, no, to basically use data from other languages, no, for at least some particular task, no, at least can bootstrap, no, verify your performance. You know, start doing for zero, no. So that's another maybe interesting direction. But yeah, many other things that can be done, obviously, and don't have the solution.
Thank you, Jose.
Thank you.
Sorry, I was muted. So we have time maybe for one last question, if anyone is interested. Hello? No? No one last question? Okay, so I do have more questions, like I said. So this is very simple, very localized. Okay, so how it is the Welsh development? So or in other words, the development of Welsh language models and so on and so forth, related technology, data sets, resources. I mean, anything that we know that we need to have good, competent language technology for a given language, for a low resource languages such as Welsh.
Yeah, I mean, I don't specifically work on that. There are a lot of people here at the university working on that and developing a lot of resources like corpora, no, and models and so on. but I don't think it's very developed. No, I mean, for example, I know, for example, in Basque, no, you have even a language model specific and so on. So that's something probably that we should take, no, and try to get that, no. So I mean, in that point where it's a bit more behind, but I mean, it's developing, especially people here at Cardiff University, people from the School of Wales and other kind of things. They are developing and working kind of from the LPP perspective. We collaborate with them and also try to help with that. But I mean, it's not very developed. Also, there are not many resources. So the first work that they did, it was mostly to compile many kind of resources into a big corpus. Big, because I mean, it's big, but by today's standards of a language model, it's not that big, no? So I don't know the exact numbers.
Yeah.
But that was the first thing, collecting all that and so on. That's been collected, and maybe we need to collect more as well. But yeah, but that was a big first step, no? So, yeah. But yeah, it's not very developed. That's kind of the.
No, that's okay.
It's something that maybe needs much more, no, efforts and so on. It's interesting from the research point of view, no. So I mean, there are things that we can do, and we can see kind of improvements, no, kind of here and there. But yeah, we need to have much more targeted. Also, what kind of applications, no, we want to use this technology, because I think that's a problem in general, no, in the world, no. Everything's going so fast, no? So we don't know exactly what.
Well, it is true that sometimes what is a good solution for one case maybe is not the best or the ideal for a different one. I mean, I think for each language, you need to actually have a careful design of what is going to be the optimal strategy. No, I mean, not because in one language developing maybe a native. Is going to be a solution in the short term. Maybe in the long term, maybe yes, if you want to have a little bit of technological independence. But I don't know. There are so many solutions. I was talking yesterday about the big advantages of multilingual language models for low resource languages. No, that before we didn't have data, we just couldn't do anything. And now with this kind of models, at least you can. For some languages, you can make do, right?
Yeah.
Which is, yeah. Anyway, so thanks very much, Jose. Very interesting. A lot of questions remain open, obviously. I hope we can talk again about this and other issues, obviously. Yeah, and thank you very much for
thank
your
you
talk.
to me. Yeah, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks everybody for attending. I'll see you in the next webinar. In one more time, just keep in tune, okay? Thank you.